All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Co-Pilot series. Delighted to be joined today by Natalie Collins. Natalie, for the crowd on the line who haven't met you before, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. These days I'm a corporate executive and a non-executive director. I've worked across finance, across marketing, supply chain, corporate governance, and a lot of time in corporate innovation, across professional services, CPG, retail, and capital markets. In terms of what I do today, I'm head of commercial partnerships at Woolworths Group, effectively working with our acquisition businesses to unlock value across Woolworths' ecosystem. I'm also a non-executive director at Centuria Capital. They're a fund manager specialising in property funds and investment bonds. I'm also really passionate about the startup industry. I'm an advisor and an angel investor.
Brilliant. Well, that's the part of the story we're keen to unpack today. So thank you for joining us. Do you want to take us back to the beginning of how you got into angel investing?
Yeah, sure. So I was working at Coca-Cola Amatil. I've been working in corporate innovation somewhere along the pipeline of innovation for a number of years, and I was given the opportunity to co-found our corporate venture capital arm. And that saw us run a corporate accelerator. And then we also invested in startups across Australia, New Zealand, and Indonesia. And it was just a really great way to be introduced to the startup ecosystem. And from that moment, I didn't really look back. I went from spending Coca-Cola Amatil's money and capital to my own. So that's really how I started.
Yeah, brilliant. And so how long were you at Coca-Cola Amatil and in that venture type role?
So I was at Coke for about 20 years,
Right.
but I was in the venture capital space for the last 3. And it was an interesting journey getting to that point because I'd worked, as I said earlier, really broadly across the organisation. I'm an accountant by trade, but haven't worked as one for a long time, and worked across supply chain, marketing, and really got to understand the business and the challenges and opportunities that we had. And so it placed me really well to then look across startup technologies and business models and figure out where they could fit along our value chain. And so, yeah, I spent 3 years doing that before leaving, coming to Woolworths.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really interesting history, that sort of corporate VC type model. Are there any ones in the Coke portfolio that we might know or?
What you might know, there's one called Liven, which is a consumer-facing app. So we sort of looked at 2 ends of the value chain. So one was around, what could help our customers to sell more, and that was a really great example of that. And the other end was more down our supply chain end and what could make us more efficient. So probably less consumer-facing things, if you will.
Yeah, brilliant. Oh, such a good entry point into the space. And so for you personally then, you obviously got a taste of the startup world through that. So what was your overarching strategy when you started dabbling into angel investing?
I would say it was less of a strategy and more of following a passion when I started out. So I'm an investor across all asset classes. It's just, something that I really enjoy doing. And I guess angel investing was a chance for me to follow something that I'd become really passionate about. I just love the positivity and the forward-looking nature of startups. And obviously it's a lot higher risk, but hopefully there's higher return there too. So there was a real interest that I had. I did, however, look to Jason Calacanis in the early days, read his book Angel, just to help me, I guess, educate myself around portfolio construction and the amount of capital I should think about investing, the size of the check size I should be looking at. And just in the early days, some of the things I should be looking for from founders and their business models before I decided to write a check.
Yeah. And you also did the Start Mate First Believers course, is that right?
Yeah, I did. That was another thing that got me started. So it was, again, a really great thing to do one, from an education perspective. So again, that sort of augmented what I'd been reading about in Jason's book, but also to introduce me to a lot of the players in the startup industry. So a lot of the syndicates that are there, just a lot of the figures that I guess once you're in it, you know them. And yeah, they were all really welcoming and happy to give me some time so I could, ask my questions and just sort of help shape my thinking about how I wanted to turn up in this space.
Yeah. Oh no, it's a good program, and I love the more people that do it, the better depth we're getting across the Aussie angel investing space. It's brilliant.
Yeah,
Do you
absolutely.
do you remember what your first investment was?
I do. It was a 1013 investment,
Oh,
actually.
cool.
And it was right in the height of the middle of 2021, in the height of when it was quite busy. And I think for me, it was a frictionless way to start. And I mean, they're all high risk investments, aren't they? But low risk in the sense that I was investing behind a VC that I trusted. I could piggyback off their DD, and yeah, it was just a really positive experience. So for me, it was just an opportunity to jump in and get started.
Yeah, nice. And did you do any additional DD to supplement what the team had already done?
Nothing in any huge amount of detail. And I guess that's one of the things I find most challenging in this space as an investor with the rest of my portfolio. And probably, I don't know if that makes me different to other investors or not, but working in a full-time exec role, holding down a non-exec director position, the time, and I'm a mum too. So family, duties and responsibilities there. So I openly admit I don't have a lot of time to do DD at the moment. So through the First Believers program, I learnt a lot, and I actually, drew up my sort of investment thesis and how I would go about it. But it's not something I have time to really put into practice. So my model these days is to outsource that to people that I believe do a really good job. And then I overlay my own thinking about, what sort of business models and industries I want to invest in. But yeah, the level of DD that I am able to do these days is quite light touch. So hopefully in a few years' time, when things might shift for me, then that's something I'd love to get a little more involved in.
Yeah. Well, it's good that you're in the space and yeah, seeing as much deal flow as you can possibly, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's either go with that model in my case, or wait. And with this particular asset class, as you know, you kind of got to be in it for a while before there's any sort of return. So I prefer to get started now, and if that means I guess paying others who I respect and value a little bit to get access to the deals, then that's what I'm going to do.
Very good. And so you've been at this a few years. How many in the portfolio thus far?
So the portfolio is a mix of syndicate investments, funds, and I've got a few direct investments. So there'd be about 25 now over that time. They're not all large check sizes. In fact, none of them would be considered large. But yeah, I've built quite some depth there now.
Excellent. And you mentioned, you in the early days, you were trying to refine what sort of things you might back. Have you got some focus areas or any things that are on the no-go list?
I do. So, I mean, I feel most comfortable investing in areas that I know, I think like most people. So for me, that's retail tech, supply chain tech, potentially sustainability, or, particularly in the area of plastics and that sort of thing. And then things that I'm less inclined to invest in would probably be crypto. Just don't have an in-depth knowledge of that, so I probably tend to steer away from that. And other than that, I think just like any asset class, just getting some diversity in your portfolio. So it's not that I'll only invest in those things, but I probably I'm attracted to those things because I understand them.
Yeah, and you can assess the opportunity a little bit better.
Absolutely.
And so 25 is a reasonable size. Do you have any tips and tricks for how you actually track how each of them are going?
So I do have, there's nothing sophisticated, but I do have a spreadsheet that I use to capture all the information. But I would say that's definitely, I mean, I'm still fairly early on in the journey, I think. So that's still something I'm building out, how I'm going to track them over time. So open to any tips you might have, Soph.
Yeah. I'm in the process of collating all this feedback from all the amazing co-investors of ours out there. So I'll pull it together and let you know.
Excellent.
Spreadsheets is definitely a popular choice, though.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier, like when you did the First Believers program, you actually sort of came up with your own investment philosophy or thesis. Do you want to talk us through some of that if you're happy to share?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything in there that's unique, or it will be surprising. It's, looking at the team. For me, that's the first thing, and can absolutely break a deal in my mind. So, do they have the experience to be working in this space? And not just that, do they have that passion? Like, is this their life's work? Is a really good question to ask. Do you get that sense about them? Are they going to be committed to this in the long run? So that for me is number one. And then, what's the technology? Is there some sort of proprietary tech or competitive advantage that they're building that others won't have access to be able to build? Traction's another good one. What's their, reactive customers? Are the customers coming back? What revenue are they made? Is there any signs of revenue at this point? And then sort of trends, like what are they tapping into that's trending at the moment that makes this moment in time the right time to invest? And then terms, I guess, would be the other thing. Are they sort of the right sort of terms for me to invest on?
Yeah.
So nothing that should be a surprise. I wouldn't think so.
No, but I think you've consolidated that really nicely for some of the things that are great to look for. So it's awesome. Thank you. When you talk to team and the founding team, like, do you have any ways you like to assess whether it is their life's work? Like, how do you sort of sense check that?
So, I mean, understanding their background, I think if they're not going to be investing their life, their forward life in this, if it's not something they've been doing in the past, like they really have to have a really in-depth understanding. And there's normally some kind of personal story, I find, to those that are setting up for this to be their life's work. It's not about making money. And, I'm sure they all want to do that, and hopefully they will in time. But there's a higher purpose about it. And you can just get that sense through talking to them. I always like when there's more than one founder, if that's possible. It's not a deal breaker, but it is nice to know that they're sharing that journey. It's a really hard journey, that of a founder. So if they can share that with someone, I think that just gives me an extra level of comfort. So yeah, I don't know that it's anything more complicated than really understanding their passion for it, and just getting to know them and why they're doing it.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. So when founders are pitching you, and you said you've done a few direct investments,
Yeah.
Are there any key questions you want answered?
Yeah, look, it probably comes back to what I was sharing around my, the way I assess and do DD. I guess that comes through in the questions I ask. So, what's the early evidence of product market fit? Traction in what are we seeing there? Do they have a functional prototype? What is it that they've put out there? It doesn't have to be the end game. In fact, I prefer if it wasn't, because you like them to iterate through learning from a customer. I always like to know how much runway they're raising for.
Yeah.
Just sort of, it's a really big process raising capital, so you don't want them to be doing that all the time. So for me, I like to see sort of 18 to 24 months runway that they're aiming for. Very keen to understand what they're going to use the capital for. And for me, if there's any VC funding in the round as well. So, I've sort of talked about the inability of me to be able to do too much DD at the moment. So I certainly get a level of comfort when there's some VC funding in the round, and I just, I'm happier to follow on in that space. So, that's not necessarily always going to be the case, but for me and the way that I invest at the moment, that's certainly a question I like to ask.
Brilliant. Do you wish founders knew about investors?
Yeah, I wish they knew that not all investors have access to a large pool of cash or some kind of money tree in their backyard. And look, that's probably true for some, but I know a lot of investors that are like me, and that's not the case. They are angel investors because they really believe in founders and their vision, and they're passionate about making a difference in the world. So they want to use their experience to make a difference, and hopefully a little bit of funding. It's always nice to have some skin in the game. So yeah, I think that's what I wish they all knew, that
it's not just financial support,
that's right. But not everyone's got this massive pool of cash to deploy.
Yeah, but so much wealth of knowledge and background and industry experience, and so much you can tap.
Absolutely.
Are you happy to talk to them? You said you mentor or advise a few companies. Are you happy to elaborate on that?
Yeah. So yeah, the first probably 6 months I became really active in this space. I wasn't really sure what it was that I would have to add. And someone said to me early on in that journey, find your superpower. And I had no idea what that meant or what it was. And it was only through just having conversation after conversation with founders with the goal of being helpful, not knowing how I would do that, that I was able to sort of uncover where that was. And for me, having a corporate career and a corporate experience, a lot of founders are trying to work out how to connect and grow their business by working with enterprise. And so for me, that was a really great way that I could help. So help them understand how to unlock their sales pipeline, how to have conversations with corporate customers, and then how to even think about ways of working and an early stage governance in the way that a corporate does, not in a heavy way, but just bring some of that structure. So to things like setting OKRs. So that was sort of my way, and I found that to be really helpful. And well, the founders seem to think that that's really helpful. So yeah, I think my advice to anyone as an angel investor would be to find your superpower. It certainly worked for me, and that's how I'm helping founders these days. I think probably in addition to that though would be using your network too. So that might be to help them find the right advisor. In the early days, they might be looking for a particular skill set. And when you've been around the traps for a little while, you build, you amass quite a network. So reaching out to that network to try and make those right connections is another one. And then pitch deck feedback is always a good one too. I think, as an investor or as an advisor, you've seen lots of pitch decks. So I find that that's always a good practical way to help.
Oh, that's some excellent advice there. Thank you. I guess we'll just close out with, tell us a little bit more about what you're working on at the moment, and I guess in the corporate role, and then if there's anything else in the sort of angel space as well, we'd love to hear what's exciting you at the moment.
Yeah. So I shared earlier, I work at Woolworths Group. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about and have been since I've worked in this space is bringing together startups and corporates so that you can sort of bring that startup mindset and that new technology and business model together with the existing customer base, and just the scale of corporate enterprise, and just what you can create out of that, I think, is quite magic. So that's something I'm really passionate about. At the moment, I'm bringing that to life within Woolworths Group. We've recently just launched Woolworths Market Plus, which is one door for third-party sellers to sell their products across marketplaces within Woolworths Group. So that's across MyDeal, Everyday Market, and recently launched Big W Market.
Wow.
Which is, just fantastic. So we're able to really leverage the existing website traffic that exists across Woolworths Group marketplaces, but now apply the technology that we bought through our 80% acquisition of MyDeal about 12 months ago, apply that proprietary technology and build that out so that we've got this amazing marketplace for third-party sellers. So we've launched about 4 weeks ago, and the early signs are really positive. So yeah, that's definitely what I'm passionate about at the moment.
Oh, that's brilliant. And I guess for any founders out there who are sort of listening in on some of these investor calls, is there an opportunity for anyone to reach out to you? I know you've got a full schedule with the various hats you wear.
Oh, absolutely. Always. So I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there. Always happy to hear from founders. And if my experience and skill set can add value to your business, absolutely. I'd love to make some time to have a conversation.
Oh, brilliant, Natalie. Well, we're thrilled to have you part of the TEN13 network, and thank you for sharing your story with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.